Okay, so this is the May uh, manga of 2025, or should I say, this is April/May manga of 2025. Mangas you could read in May that came out in January, February, March, and April. So for those 4 months, I condensed as many mangas as I possibly could condense together, and I managed to get at least five of them that were actually decent and two of them that were actually very good. I had to sift through a lot of garbage because that's the way it is in the manga world, especially since people are really into romance and perverted stuff and all the other crap you. I had to go through one page that was just full of nothing but um, romance that was man on man, woman on woman. That stuff is all good, but then it went to perverted levels and stuff. So I was like, you know what? No, page two, page three, page four. For each page, there's probably one or two that are actually good. So you really have to sift through a lot of bad stuff in order to get to the good stuff. And by the time I got to page 50, that's when I called it quits. So I wasn't going to sift through any more. So by the time I got to page 50, I managed to have at least 30 of mangas that were good, manhwas. And then I knocked that down to about 10 after I realized the ones that I thought were good or 30 were actually hiding, some sadistic stuff in them, and then I knocked it down to 10. And then I knocked those 10 down to about 5 because the stories for those other ones were dragged on, or the animation wasn't good, or the perspectives weren't good, and so on and so forth. So we got 5 right here. So before further ado, my name is Magheed. I do mangas, anime, gaming, and I do this for fun. And the reason why I do it is because, well, I don't trust other people's opinions, but at the same time, I trust their opinions as far as I could throw it when it comes to certain things. But I need to have something that's I know is real, accurate, and information given from someone who's really into that thing. Things that you wouldn't normally know unless the person's really into it. And I'm not saying other people can't do these things. I'm just saying sometimes what one person enjoys and thinks is good, sometimes other people thinks is crap. So it's always good to have difference of opinions, and whether that person's doing it for money or they're doing it just for fun. So moving on from that, I'm gonna get straight into it. The 5 that I decided to put on this list, 3 is very good and 2 are questionable, but at the same time, questionable stuff could be someone's cake while it's someone else's shit. So moving on from that, I'm gonna name them right now. So first one, I'm starting from best to okay. First one is Waiting for the Sunlight. The second one is um, X Do Over Oblivion Lovers. I think that might be the third one, but I'm putting it in the second place because the mystery is very good. Third one is Mason and the Man Eating Apartment. Fourth one is The Unnamed Sea. And the fifth one is The End Has Come. The fifth one, I'm still not sure if I should have put it on the list, or maybe I should have just had four. But it's a Korean zombie horde type of situation. But it feels more like I'm trying to get this girl type situation rather than survive the zombie apocalypse type situation. So I'm still not so sure about that, even after I read chapter 6 and 7. So I'm going to start off with the one that is actually the best one. And to some people, it probably would fit more in the second place than in the first place, because the one thing I would say about this manga, even though it's military, even though it's history, even though it's rural history, rural Japanese history, um, and many of the stuff in here are actually true. And of course, characters might be fictitious in certain situations are fictitious. The one thing I would say that's the only bad thing about this manga is that it takes a while to get to the point of what's going on. And sometimes that could be bad for certain people. But old school people and traditional manga readers call this build up. build up, that you're pacing yourself in order to get to the good stuff, or in this situation, in order to get to the more devastating stuff. This is a manga about World War II. This is a manga of a specific place in Japan, very specific. This is a manga of loss. So if you are, I wouldn't recommend children reading this. Yes, a child could read this to a certain point of view and enjoy what's going on. But the subject matter in this manga starts to get very serious, that a child would understand, but a child would deviate from this and find something more lighthearted because it will start to depress them and they wouldn't like it. And a parent will look at it and says, no, this is not for kids, because why should a kid be reading something about someone getting killed? Yeah, and so that's not really good. And also, it's about child labor during times of war in order to make weapons for the military, and starvation and catching disease, a whole lot of bad stuff. So no, this is not for kids. And also, it might also not be for adults as well. And what I mean by adults, I mean by adults who had kids, or who have kids, or who used to have kids. It reminds them of the children they've lost, or those who are far away in certain situations with regards to your children have joined the military in service to the country, or whatever country you're part of, France, America, Japan, so on and so forth, in current times as well as in the past, ancient times as well as in medieval times. Anyone who's ever sent their children off into the military or have them serve voluntarily have always worried that the children are going to die from so on and so forth. So this is a reminder, would be a reminder to them that, yeah, it wouldn't make anyone feel good. However, why this is the number one is because it's, one, has some historic accurate stuff. Two, the story is very good and the build up is steady. But when it does get to the good stuff, it gets good. And when it does get to deep stuff, it gets good. And it's very lighthearted, but it has very undertones of serious situations. Stuff that doesn't necessarily have to do with, I'm storming the beach, I'm blowing people's head off, my friend's about to die, he's bleeding, I have to put a tourniquet on his leg. Serious stuff like that. This is more on the level of the labor used by the Japanese government in order to give those men weapons and give them armor and give them food, and to force people into um, labor and fund them in return in order to balance off the threshold of losses of products and losses of weaponry, and to find means in order to fool the enemy or to destroy the enemy by any means possible, taxing, so on and so forth. So this is from the point of view of civilians who have to do things that they don't want to do because they're living in a government during time of war. So it's very good. You get to see the story. I don't care about all that crazy depressing stuff. When I read a manga, it's about the story and what's going on in the story. So without further ado, I'll get into this. Otherwise, it's going to get real deep. This is a very deep manga. And if you're not into deep manga, you want to skip this one, go on, you go on to the second one. But for right now, I'll go from page to page to page. So, it says right here, ceramic weapons made by mobilized students. These, the first three things you see up here, here, and here. These are actually grenades, and these are true. They used to use ceramic grenades when they ran out of metal grenades during World War II. The Japanese people used it. Of course, other countries made fun of them for this because they lacked the resources, but the best part about using ceramic stuff is that they're organic and they cannot be detected by radar or other metal detected devices. Yes, metal detected scanning devices existed back then. Actually started probably during World War One, but it was more heightened in World War Two. Special scanners for beaches and mines and beaches. So ceramic weapons were used to place in water to blow up troops who are storming beaches because they cannot be detected, and are also used for grenades as well because they were easily accessible and lightweight, and could be when they explode they cause more uh, flesh damage with regards to burning and stuff because they're organic in design. Um, of course, they were cheap, and Japanese government was running out of money, so they had to use a lot of old school tactics in order to defeat their enemies. So this story is the story of Japanese culture who were kind of forced out of necessity in order to support the government. And the main protagonist of this story is a girl called Yoko. And Yoko doesn't give a damn about the military and what's going on in the military. She's just a damn little kid because she's a kid, for crying out loud. And she's born during the time of war, and she can't do anything about it. And she's enjoying life, and she's looking at her little panda, and she doesn't have any friends other than her one friend called Yuki. Um, and she's very good at drawing, and she's very good at ceramic works. So this is her friend, the panda right here. It's a statue. She's loved the statue since she was a kid, when she was a baby, and then she grew up and got to a certain age. So she's now, I believe she could be anywhere from 8 or 7 or 9. She could be 10 years old. Either way, I believe she's in sixth grade. She said she's in sixth grade, so she can't be like 8 or 7, like something like that. She's probably like 10 or 11. So moving on from that, we get to see the name of the district that she lives in. Shigaraki Village. That's the name of Shigaraki Village. Koka District of the Nagano Shiga Prefecture. Prefecture is like it's a prefecture would be like a description of a state. Um, like if you have Texas, you have New York, stuff like that. So the Shiga Prefecture, or the state of Shiga, is where she's staying at, and the district is like the local little town, like in districts of Cocoa District or Cocoa Town or something like that, or Cocoa Village, a village that's part of a town. Yeah, so she's part of a village that's part of a larger town, or like a town that's inside of a city. So Cocoa District is probably like the city or something like that. So moving on from that, we get to the next. Where am I? There. Okay, we get to see other characters, and this girl here is an important. The one thing I would say about this manga, every character in here, or at least almost every character in here, plays a very important point with regards to the story. Another reason why this is a number one. We have here is a girl, and Shizu, I believe her name is, or Shizune. She's a young girl who wished she was born a boy, so she could go off and support the Japanese government. Unfortunately, she's born a girl, and she has to do girl things, and she doesn't like it at all. And she wants to support the nation in her own way to show patriotism. Her parents, on the other hand, don't like that at all. Like even if her parents had a boy and she was a boy, they still won't like it because it means during times of war, your child will probably be killed during times of war. And parents knew this, all parents knew this during this time of war in Japan. And she knows that she can't join the front lines and she can't support, she can't do anything with regards to fighting in combat. So she wants to support the military of the people on the front lines in the support position. Of course, everyone knows that even support positions, such as in the rear with the gear, doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to die. It just necessarily means it's more likely that you're not going to die, or that you're more likely to be harmed in certain ways. And her parents doesn't like it at all. However, she's a very determined young girl, and in some ways, I think she's kind of foolish because and naive, like most teenagers are. They don't understand the situation of what's going on. They understand the situation of their country's at war. They understand the situation of patriotism. They understand the situation of dedication. They understand the situation of doing your duty and being an adult. But they don't understand the situation of the bureaucracy that happens with regards to warfare. They don't understand that they're being used, as manual labor. They don't understand that the government doesn't really care that much for their survival as long as the government win and acquire the resources they need in order to make their government stronger so that they could be a fighting force equal to that of foreign countries. The amount of people they would sacrifice in order to do so, they don't seem to understand that yet. But the manga slowly gets into that stuff. Like I said, this is kind of a deep manga. Moving on from that, we get to see the next scene. I'm going to try to see if I can breeze through all of this as fast as I can. But this is a very deep kind of manga. So I'm gonna make sure everything is hit correctly before I move on to the next manga. And okay, so she says, "Good morning, Yuki. This is a friend, the long hair one with the little ponytails on the side of her back. She's Yuki. Here's a childhood friend. They grew up together. They're talking to each other about what they're going to do for the day. Both of them, I believe, work at the ceramic shop. Learning stuff how to do ceramics. They're not actually laborers. They're just learning. They go around adults and learning how to do things. All of that is going to change in the future. Very sad. Um, she just goes to school, and in school she gets a zero. Back in the days when you used to get like a zero and stuff, it doesn't really mean that she got a zero. It means that she gets 1 point, like in traditional Japanese writing or traditional Japanese culture. um, to get like a double circle or triple circle or something like that means excellence, but to get to like one circle, it means normal. So she gets one circle, which means that she did a normal drawing. And the reason why she only got one circle is because her drawing is about something that doesn't show patriotism towards her nation. It shows patriotism towards what she finds to be the love of her nation. Like a country had given her the opportunity to look at a panda and love this panda. So she loved the nation that allow her to see a panda when she wake up every morning. She doesn't realize that the government doesn't really care about something like this, that the people who design this are the people who love the village they're in, that has nothing to do with nature. The naivety of a child, not understanding the world as of yet. Eventually, all this will come to realization. Okay, later down the road, the sister, or should I say, Shizune, Shizune is actually not her sister. Shizune is her aunt because Yoko's mother and her father are dead. His father died um, during the military times of the military, and her mother, when she was very young, a baby, I believe, died from disease. So she doesn't have Yoko doesn't have parents anymore, and she's living with her aunt. And her aunt, which is Shizune, who's a very young teenager, is actually living with her mother and her father. So she's living with her relatives, so to speak. And they have taken on the role of mother and father for Yoko. She looked at her artwork. Shizune said, "Your artwork is fantastic. She should have got a double circle." She says, "Why?" It's because at the moment, during times of war, people want more patriotism. And the one thing I wouldn't, if you pay attention to the manga, you would see everyone has like this type of depressed look in their face, in their eyes, with regards to when their eyes is covering over their, or should I say, their eyelashes is covering over their eyes, is that they're trying to be dismissive of the reality that's going on, but they're fully aware of what's going on. Of the young kids don't know. The young kids are just on. They know, but they don't really understand the seriousness of it. In some cases, the teenagers don't understand as well. And here's a good example. Shizune's boyfriend, I believe, which is the brother of Yuki, is going off to the military, or he's training to go off to the military by passing the entrance exam. So he's going to do his best in order to join the military as a young man. I believe he's of age in order to join the military, 17, 18 years of age, maybe 16. I'm not sure how it goes in Japan. But then Yuki understands what that means, that he's going to go away and he's probably not going to come back, and she might have to take over the family business. Moving on from that, get to see Yoko at the ceramic shop practicing and learning how to do ceramics. They basically, this is the part where the context of Yoko not having a mother is mentioned within the manga. And so they feel sorry for her. That's why they let her stay at the ceramic shop and have her learn what she wants while she can, even though they're not taking seriously of her learning. But Yuki, or should I say Yoko, is very serious about learning how to use ceramics. Even though she's enjoying it, she's just absorbing it and soaking up all the information of how to make ceramics. Another thing with regards to this manga is very true to how ceramics are made. You usually use ceramic, like clay blocks, and then you cut it off using a wire, and then after you cut it off using a wire, take the piece, you roll it up into your hand, and then you create whatever you have to create with regards to that. And of course, heating and all this stuff comes up after. So it doesn't get into the deepness of how to do ceramics, but it get into, I would say, a good 15% of how to do ceramics. So there's a bit, maybe a small bit of education that's located within this manga. So she makes a small little ceramic doll with regards to the statue that she saw that she liked as a kid, that's outside of her home and stuff. And she does it within the ceramic shop. He says, "Your stuff is good. You're a great, almost a genius artisan with regards to doing ceramics for someone so young." She has the skill. She has a very good skill. Then she goes home and she tells them about it, and they say that's great and everything. But the father is kind of distracted with regards to what's going on overseas. It turns out that Japanese had taken over the Dutch East India Trading Company islands, which would be considered modern day Indonesia, um, because the Dutch East India Trading Company is different from the regular British East India Trading Company. The Dutch were their own empire, the British were their own empire, and of course the Japanese came over, took over those islands, and decided to take the crops and everything and use those resources as well as manual labor and slaves for their own personal necessities, which is not a good thing for East India Trading Company, because even though the Dutch and the British were two different conglomerates with East India trading, under the word conglomerate, they were kind of joint in some many ways. Both had shareholders who were jointly dependent on certain resources for making themselves stronger. And because they were being hit hard by the Japanese government, which is a true story, the Americans stopped giving Japan oil for quite some time, something that they used to do in the past. And now, because of this, they did not. So, this is another true historical factor presented in this manga. Moving on from that, he then says Japan is the one that's cruel. They invaded an island full of people just to claim things so they could make their government stronger, and thus we now have to deal with the situation of having to deal with the Americans who are now going to not give us oil, which we need in order to do certain things in our country. But during times of war, when people see opportunity to make themselves stronger, they would do so by force if necessary. Very reminiscent of what's going on right now, and in many countries, it's kind of pathetic. You know, this is one of the reasons why you always keep your eye on your enemies, because if as good as a country claim themselves to be, if you consider that country your enemy country, they're your enemy country for one reason, because they've done shitty stuff in the past. And it's more likely, if they've done shitty stuff in the past and they got away with it and then someone checked them later, it's more likely that you have to keep your eye on them so that they don't do it again. And if they end up doing it again, it's like saying, aha, see, I know that you were always this type of person, and it proved the point that you're doing it again. So, yeah, like shitty countries are the ones that you must always keep your eye on, no matter how patriotic and no matter how communistic they believe themselves to be, no matter how uh, different, no matter how patriotic they believe themselves to be. Any country that invades another country and take things by force is a country you must keep your eye on at all times. Now, people say the same thing with regards to the United States of America. they invade. But America never really invades another country without consent unless there are reason for it to be so. In other words, 9/11 happens, you blow up our freaking buildings and stuff without any consent, kill everybody, civilians. It's not like you're doing Pearl Harbor stuff and then invading Pearl Harbor, kamikaze style, killing military soldiers. You're just killing civilians for no reason. And then all of a sudden, when you get retaliated upon, you start complaining that the country that retaliates on you, America, is wicked for doing so. Listen, if you do shitty stuff to someone, and then someone does shitty stuff back to you, you can't complain that that country is wicked if you've done shitty stuff in order to get retaliated on. The same goes vice versa. American can't complain that, hey, these people are doing shitty stuff coming into our country. Like, well, if you didn't do these shitty things over in foreign countries, then they wouldn't be coming and doing certain things over here. The same thing goes towards border crossing and so on and so forth. They can't really come into this country and do all the shitty things and think that retaliation is not going to happen. People really need to understand if you do certain things, you have to pay for the consequences for your own actions. The same goes on in this manga. And moving on from that, we get to this next scene where Yuki's worrying about her brother and not coming back. And Yoko said, well, I'll be the man of the house. I'll take care of you. And she said, well, Yoko, you're just a girl. You don't understand how man things work. It's like, I'm a fast learner. I know how to do things, so on and so forth. It's like, but don't worry. Your brother will come back soon. They don't know anything. But I guess for kids, it's perfectly fine for them to deal with what's going on so far. Eventually, one of the guy in the ceramic shop saw Yoko's little ceramic doll that she made. And she says, well, this is not patriotic towards the country. We're in a dire situation here. We can't be making stuff like this. The other two ceramic adults are workers in there, are saying, she's just a kid. She's just doing this to make herself deal with the situation in her life. He then throws it to the ground and break it. Um, the woman is then scolding him about breaking the little ceramic doll from the kid, and that he had no right to do that, which he didn't. But then you get to learn that it's not as simply as it seems, because he didn't apologize with regards to this, because he's going through certain things with regards to what's going on with the military and what's going on with his life. So he didn't break it because he's a completely selfish person. He broke it out of anger and out of the situation that's going on with regards to war and his position with regards to being a ceramic artist, working in the shop. Of course, she goes to the statue and complains to the statue that she's not really making friends, but she has to endure certain things because that's what a Japanese person or Japanese people are supposed to do. The whole duty is to endure during hardship, which is true. And also, moving on from that, we get to go to, I believe this is the second chapter, where we see um, uh, Yuki's brother goes off into the military, wear the military uniform, young man going off to the military. He says bye to Shizune, and Shizune basically says bye to him, and she's happy for him. Yet she has like this worried look on her face, but it's not really worried look. It's like I said before about Shizune. She's just like upset that he's going off and she is not going off. I've never met someone more determined to be like a guide than Shizune, or maybe they have been in manga, but she's, even though she looks like she's happy for him, but in some way she's actually upset that she's not in his place. So that said, moving on to the next image, we get to see a broadcast on the radio, old-fashioned radio, about what's going on overseas and so on. The Imperial Army and the Navy are doing their own thing. They're holding back the enemies, and early morning of the 8th have entered a state of war with the American and British forces in the Western Pacifics. Of course, the Pacific War happened, and I believe this manga started as a 1941, and I believe by chapter 2 it's like 1942 or something like that. I could be wrong. Moving on from that, a military official show up to the island in order to acquire resources and stuff because the Japanese government needs it. Eventually, he says, military affairs official, we require more from your town, and we need to speak to your uncle. We need to speak to some of the delegates in regards to acquiring resources. And of course, he asks about Yoko's family, and she tells him that his father died um, in Manchuria as a deployment, and blah blah blah. Moving on from that, we get to see her talking to him about her duties of being a ceramic artist, and that if she could make ceramic stuff for the military, they don't have to. I I believe she's trying to bargain with the guy in order, even though she's young, she's trying to bargain with him, saying if we make resources for the military, then we don't have to get taxed as much, or we don't have to worry about losing certain things that we like to do. We don't have to worry about losing our ceramic shop because the government deems certain things unnecessary, and she doesn't want to lose the ceramic shop. So if the ceramic shop can help out the government, or ceramic art or any form of art can help out the government in any way, they would do this. This is upsetting for many of the ceramic artists because they are ceramic artists and do stuff in order for agriculture and other pottery and to help out their community. They're not really doing work in order to for military purposes, but during times of enduring, you have to do certain things. Moving on from that, Yoko then decides, I'm going to sneak into the next room and see what the bigwigs are talking about with regards to the military guy and how they're going to deal with the situation. You could say you're going to get in trouble. Just keep it down. It's like, yes, I'm going to keep it down. I'm going to be silent, and no one's going to know that I'm listening in. So she listened in on the situation of what's going on with regards to the army. Apparently, the army needs landmines and they need grenades and so on and so forth. And Yuki was saying to herself, oh, okay, or should I say Yoko was saying to herself, okay, so if we were able to create landmines for them, maybe that would make things a little bit less taxing. So going back to the next scene, we then see the reveal that of what Shizune feels. So she's walking down the street and I believe she's talking to Yoko, and she revealed to the reader that she was born a woman, so I can't be a soldier. And this is the part where you get to see Chizune's true feelings of how she wished she could have been a soldier, how she wished she could have been born a man, how she wished she could have been able to do certain things, and it's not her fault. She was born a girl, and that women are just as capable for fighting or supporting and doing things like men. So she's very, very bold and very strong-minded individual, and she wants to show that women can equally do everything a man can, which they can. Certain things they can't, just like a man can do certain things a woman can. But she's saying this from the point of view of a support position. She says, if I can't fight, and if I can't kill, I could do everything else other than that. And she needs to find a way in order to do so. So she eventually does. And moving on, we get to see a situation where some new kids have shown up into the town, or into the village. And these new kids were sent into the village in order to help with creating ceramic mines. So the issue for creating mines and grenades and stuff has been passed and allowed from the government for the village in order to create this for the government, and so the village can survive. And but they need hands and they need people in order to do so. But majority of their adults are off to the war, or most of the men, if not all of the men, are off to the war, leaving only the women and the children. And since the young boys are strong enough to do work for as what young men would be able to do, the young boys are then sent off into other villages to do physical labor in order to help the government to build landmines. Super messed up, but that's the way it is. Um, the way it is as in times of war, not the way it is as in It's the way it is. Yeah, really bad. Uh, by making landmines, I mean they're making the outer shells of the landmines. They're not making the gunpowder and stuff. Otherwise, these kids would have probably blown themselves up and everything. So, moving on from that, Yoko then teaches the boys how to make ceramic pottery and how they're going to make how they're going to make these landmines using ceramic pottery. And this is called the jigger jolly, and it's used for making clay, and it's used for shaping a clay into pottery plants and so on and so forth. And they're going to use this to create a upward part and a downward part with regards to the mines. And the military is going to do everything else with regards to creating gunpowder and stuff in order to make it active. So their job is just to create the shell of these things, and so on and so forth. And eventually, over time, I believe one of the boys started to get lice because he's sleeping on a bed full of lice in one of the little huts, and so he's feeling sick. So Yoko is saying, "Okay, if you're feeling sick, maybe you should go check out for a doctor." And Yuki says, "Also, are you feeling okay?" Saying, "I'm not feeling good." You know, he's young. He's doing manual labor. They wake up in the morning. It's a real messed up situation. So eventually they walked by again and they saw kids doing classes and stuff and doing drills early in the morning, so on and so forth. And eventually uh, it came to a situation where a boy came to Yoko's house in order to find food because he was getting very hungry and almost starving. And then eventually we get to learn more situation about the boy, which who happens to be the leader of the group of boys. And Yoko was saying, "Well, why were you trying to steal?" Or should I say, the family of Yoko was saying, "Why were you trying to steal fish and stuff?" He says, "Well, because I'm trying to give it back to my mates, and I need food as well." But the truth is, once I get past a certain age, they're going to send me off to the military. I want to stay here. I want to learn how to build pottery and or should I say, learn how to build landmines and labor and do these things here because the moment I get past a certain age, they're going to send me into the military in order to fight on the front lines, and he's scared of dying, which is an obvious thing. He doesn't want to fight. I believe the youngest age you could be in order to fight in the military during times of war, during World War II, it was like 15 or 16 years of age. So I believe this boy might actually be like 13 or something, 13, maybe 14, which means Shizune, since it's been a year since 1941, Shizune is probably like 12 years old right now, or 12 or 13 years old. I don't believe she's 13. I believe she's still like 12. Um, where she was either 10 or 11 in the before when I first started the manga. And then moving on from that, we get to see some officials came to her Yoko's house at night to speak to the parents. The parents then says, "Oh, your light is on," and the officials say, "Well, your daughter is kind of a selfish person because this during this time of night there's a curfew and everyone's supposed to be lights out at a certain time. There should be no studying anymore past a certain time. All labor must be done from this type of hour to this type of hour during the day, and studying is from this time period to this time period. Extra time used towards study is very bad because most of your time periods is towards doing labor and serving the government. So that's the type of world they're in. A world where studying takes second place with regards to building bombs and so on and so forth for military. In other words, being intelligent and having an education doesn't really mean shit. The labor of serving the country comes first, and what the necessity needs in order to get that done comes first. So, if you're planning on being a doctor, throw that out the window. If you're planning on being a lawyer, throw that out the window. If you're planning on being an artist, throw that out the window. Anything that's not military associated is not deemed necessary or helpful. It has to be something that will help the government. And if it's not something that will help the government during times of war, it's not needed. You know, like what's a guy going to do as a lawyer? You know, he's going to sue the enemy? No, those type of things aren't necessary during times of war. Building ships, necessary during war. Making arms, necessary during times of war. Agriculture and food distribution, necessary during times of war. things that are necessary in order to advance machine making, engineering, anything in order to advance a culture forward are the things that are considered necessary. That's why I've never ever been into things that are necessary towards the development of my government, because it's basically the government saying fuck everything that belongs in society, screw everything and everyone that of what your pursuits are in your life. You want to be a doctor, then you have to be a doctor in service to the government itself, not in service to serving and helping people, but only in service to helping people that we deem necessary to be helped. You want to be a lawyer? You're only going to be a lawyer when it's needed for you to be a lawyer, not because you want to be a lawyer. You want to be, a transportation person, you want to drive a truck stuff, like sure, but you're not going to drive a truck in order to distribute fuel back and forth to a certain state or a certain prefecture or furniture or stuff. You're going to be a truck driver in order to distribute military weapons, food, and resources to certain places. Your job is only going to be tailored to things necessary towards the development of the government, which makes sense during time of war, but also at the same time means you're not doing a job because you want to do that job. You're doing a job because the government says this is what you're going to do and this is how you're going to do it. You know, no matter what it is that you want to do in life. Let's say you actually truly want to be a doctor. Well, you're not going to be a doctor because you want to actually save people's life. The government is basically saying you're going to be given a license to be a doctor so you can help this type of people and screw everybody else. So if a homeless guy comes in and he's about to die from freaking getting a virus or something, no, he's going to die from getting that virus because he's not necessarily part of the need of survival of the nation. See what I'm saying? So that's what's going on. That's why war stuff is shitty as fuck. So moving on from that, we get to the next scene. We get to see Yoko, or should I say Yuki, find out more information of what's going on with the military and hearing more broadcasts with regards to what's going on with invading forces and the success of the Japanese government to bombard and defend off the enemy. And moving on from that, we get to the next scene where we see a military advisor came in to do inspections with regards to the resources and what they're having. And Yoko is very motivated about everything until she overhears him as he's walking away saying that how we need a lot more ceramic stuff, or we need these ceramic stuff that you're creating in order to kill people. So Yoko doesn't like what she hear. You know, she understands she's trying to make her little village survive and to make the ceramic shop survive. But when she hears that the reason why she's doing it is to kill other people, she doesn't realize I believe this is the first time during this manga she realizes that this is the reality that she in, and that she slowly but surely is growing up faster than she needs to, dealing with certain words and realizing certain words that she's hearing is the reality of the nature of her life, for which she's either going to revolt against eventually in time in the manga, or she's going to accept. And if she accepted, it's very heartbreaking in certain ways. So moving on from that, we get to see Shizune again going ballistic with regards to her patriotism. I don't know what's up with this girl, but she's a very strange girl, and I think the people who made this manga is trying to say something about women during times of war and to emphasize the point of their courage and their bravery, which was equal to that of men, and they were always short sighted and they were always placed at the back burner. But at the same time, they're wanting and they're needing to prove themselves. It was a show that they did not understand the situation fully well, even though they did in certain ways. That if they were truly men and they were truly sent off to fight in wars, they would probably get holes punched through their body by gunfire or stabbed or killed or blown up. That it's understandable that she wants to be patriotic and to not be classified as a woman, but at the same time she doesn't understand that um, her life would be taken if she just does decide to go down this route. I don't believe I got to the level in the manga yet where does she decide to defy and want to jump over the battlefield and want to pull out a gun and support someone. I don't believe it's gotten to that point. But I have a feeling that this is the route that's going to happen with Shizune. I don't know yet. So moving on from that, we get to the next section where we see there's like an earthquake that happened. And of course, earthquakes and tsunamis are a typical thing that happen in Japan, which is true story. Of course, the earthquake happens. The little statue falls over. Yoko sees this. Yoko runs back to the statue. And directly after, I believe, maybe a few hours after, there's an air raid. Yoko says it's an air raid. The loud sounds of the horn goes off. People are running for their lives. Eventually, they go down into the caves. They're wearing this. I believe Yoko and Yuki are wearing like red hoodies over their head, like little Red Riding Hood, to match each other, and they're staying underground. And while the air raids are happening, because the air raids typically were gunships air raids, they weren't really bomber air raids. They're more like air raids with gunners who just gun down anything or any soldiers that they see. Um, I'm not particularly sure that. Well, I can't say for how things went with regards to the military when it came to air raids. So whether they were random attacking islands or they were specifically attacking islands, I can't really say. Moving on from that, we get to the next scene where we see Chizune got her training done and she's tough and she's passed the training exam and she's now able to join as a support group with regards to the military. Of course, you see the mother in the background. You see her face looking down. They're not showing her face, but we see Yoko looking at the mother, and it's kind of hinted and it's kind of obvious that how the mother feels with regards to this, that um, it's not something the mother wants for her, and they have this feeling that they might lose their daughter, um, and because they know the mother, the parents, the father, and the mother knows during times of war what happens to children, teenagers who go off to either support or to fight war. So even though Shizune is happy about this, um, and everyone's proud of this, I believe Yoko and Yuki and the parents are the only ones that aren't happy about this. But Yoko's a very strong girl and she cheers her on to say bonsai and stuff. Even though deep down inside you could tell that she doesn't feel strongly about it. We get to the next scene, and this is 1945. We skip by, I believe, 4 more years thereafter, or 3 years thereafter, 1942. We get to the time period Showa 20th, 1945. This would be the period where the bombings start to happen, and also the period where I believe either the fat man or the little boy, I believe it's the fat man, was dropped Nagasaki. It's either Nagasaki or yeah, could be wrong. It's either one or the other. I'm not sure, but it was in 1945. So this is a situation where I believe it's the turning point of this manga. We get to see another air raid happen, but this time you get to actually see the American ships or the American planes come in, and they're air raiding the village, and they start to shoot up the village, and everyone's running for their lives. Eventually, Yoko thought it was a good idea because she doesn't want anyone in the village to be killed. She decided to run, and so that the plane can see her and see, and it's kind of like she's leading the plane away from the village. And Yuki starts to bug out and she starts to cry because she believes Yoko is going to be gunned down by the American plane, which is more likely that that's going to happen. Um, Yoko is a very brave girl, to be honest with you. So the planes start, shooting up buildings and so on and so forth, trying to hit Yoko, and Yuki passes out crying and stuff. And yeah, it's a very bad situation that's happening. So eventually, one of the the bullets that hit one of the ship from the plane and breaks off a, a stone or something, and the stone hits Yoko in the head. She falls down the hill and into about a rice paddy field or something like that. Moving on from that, we get to see the kids now cheering on for the Japanese ship, Japanese plane coming in to rescue in order to fend off the American planes that have air raided, and some of them fight back. Some of the American planes got gunned down. Some of the Japanese planes get gunned down. Moving on from that, we get to see Yoko wake up, and Yuki, basically Yoko saying she saw the face of the American guy, and he was smiling that he was about to gun her down and everything, and so on and so forth, and that Yuki's just happy that she's alive. And that's where I would say it would be the end of this manga. I can't push on further from this because I believe there was like 8 chapters total, and eventually things are getting progressively more advanced with regards to the story. Like I said before, in a video, I believe when I was playing Warframe, this is one of those mangas that eventually, it's gonna happen. You know it's coming, and I'm not talking about the bombing, Hiroshima or Nagasaki. I'm talking about the air raids and the loss. That's what's coming, and because I believe this manga didn't want to go down that route of reminding people of the atomic bombs, but it does want to remind people of part of history in certain eras that were experiencing those loss during that time period. So that's the end of that manga. Waiting for the Sunlight. Very good story, very good characters. Liked it a lot. Proceeding forward to the next one, and this one is very different from Waiting for the Sunlight. I'm going to see if I'm going to try to get through this one as fast as I can. And let's see, where am I? And this is called X Do Over, Oblivion Lovers, something like that. Is it X Do Over? What the hell did I have it as? X Time Over, Oblivion Lovers. Yeah. And the main protagonist of this story is called Yumi, Shiota Yumi, and his girlfriend is Kuramatsu Ame, or Amy, or Ame, I believe is Ame, Kuramatsu Ame. Okay, so this person that you see right here, this is Shota, and this person that you see right here, this is also Shota. So Shota is video recording himself being all beat up on the floor and having a nice little psychotic moment of enjoying recording himself being all beat up on the floor. This is a nice little hint with regards to what's going on in the story. So moving on from that, we get to see an interesting take with regards to how this anime is made. This is a webtoon manga. I believe this webtoon manga is colored and is following the standards of webtoon manga. And the niche here, or the characterization here, is that this main character, Shota, goes back and forth in the body of a child in his head. So reality, he's an adult, but when he's doing anything that seems selfish or mischievous, or he feels like he's a victim or something, he's always seen in the form of a child. Like, he's very innocent in that sense, but he's pretty much an adult. So when he wakes up, he looks into the mirror, he sees himself as an adult. He doesn't remember who he is and how he got into this room. So the whole point of this story is for Shota to recall his memory and to remember who he is. He goes to a school, and he does fine arts at the school as his major in painting. And he was enrolled in 2020, and that's his full name, and he's a student ID and so on and so forth. And this is his picture, his student ID. He goes to the Tokyo University of Arts. He's an art student, and of course, his contact information, his cell phone has Kuramatsu, his girlfriend. At the moment, he doesn't know that is the girlfriend. So he goes through his closet, and he goes through his cupboard, and he goes through his medicine cabinet, and he goes through other shelves within his kitchen to find out a little bit of information about himself, what he likes to do, who he is, what his name is, so on and so forth. So moving on from that, we get to see other situations with regards to um, who he is and what he is and what he does. And we get to see that he has a shared trauma, or not a really a shared trauma, more like a trauma with regards to stress and memory loss, chronic memory loss, and may occur as a result of strong psychological impact as a trauma or accumulated stress. So when he in that image before, when he was seen on the ground, passed out, it could have been that he fell from somewhere, hit his head somewhere, or someone has done something to him. So the mystery lies with regards to who he is and what's going on in his life and what's happening in his life. So we get to the next scene, and we see here it says, I am being held captive at the moment. So he believes he's being held captive in that apartment building, but he doesn't know that he's being held captive at the apartment building. So he runs through the apartment, and eventually came to understanding that he might not be held captive. So he decides to get dressed, goes to school to see if he could find out something of who he is. He walks around in the school. Eventually, he doesn't know anyone or anything with regards to the school. So he proceeds forward into the class where he's an art student in. He goes into the classroom to be an art student, but then no one speaks to him in the room. So he leaves for the day, and he says, I seem to have no friends at the university. So something's odd about this. How come I have no friends in the university? How come no one wants to speak to me? Something's not going on. Something's not right. He then says, I can't remember my parents' face or their names or anything with regards to that. So as he gets home, he then meets this girl that's standing outside his apartment door. This is Kuramatsu Ame, and she's happy to see him. She tells him his name. She then gives him a piece of paper to show him of what happens to him, and she says he has this associative amnesia, which means he would forget who he is, and eventually he will have to reclaim that memory, but eventually he's going to forget it over time if it's not something that's important. So it shows that on December 22nd, 2021, he suffered a fall resulting in severe head trauma and memory impairment, unable to recall critical information including self, identity, and family relationship, currently undergoing outpatient treatment at Tokyo General Research Hospital. So he fell and he had severe trauma because of head injury. But seeing that the fact that he saw himself recording himself after he fell and enjoying the fact that he fell is very suspicious. So this is more of a mystery, more of him finding out who he is. It's like a Memento. Guy has memory loss. Guy has to know what's going on. Turns out it's more going on than he thought. So it's like a little Memento situation going on, trying to find his self. So I believe the girl has something to do with it. I can't, for the life of me, figure out what that is as of yet after going through the first 5 chapters. But I believe she's definitely might not be a good person, but I can't tell at the moment. What I do know is that they were both kids when they were growing up, and eventually they went to the same school, and eventually they became boyfriend girlfriend. And he did stated that how he is able to live by himself because he got a tuition to go to school, and his parents gives him money every now and again, so on and so forth. But it's much cheaper than other universities, so on and so forth. But there's something about her that I'm not too sure about. I'm not too sure what to make of her. Every time I see her, she has like this very lazy eye and mischievous behavior about her, um, as if she knows something, but she's refusing to say something. As if she's aware of something and she refused to say something. Now, she has this eye patch over her eyes, which means that she has an injury, and she will later describe why she has the eye patch over her eyes. But at the moment, he basically said, I can't recall anything, I can't remember how to do my art, but for muscle memory, I know how to do things based on my skill. So I'm going to do things from muscle memory, and he draws the face of this guy or this character on a piece of paper, and he doesn't know who this is, but for some reason it's familiar to him. It's someone he's probably seen before. He doesn't know who it is. The professor then goes to him and says, well, you don't have a deadline, but you have to submit your artwork, so on and so forth. And he then, I believe Shiota then says to himself, it's very strange that he's the only one that doesn't have a deadline, but everyone in the class has a deadline. It's like, it feels like everyone knows what's going on with him except him. And I'm not sure if the teacher is suspicious or anything, but I wouldn't say the teacher is suspicious at the moment, but I would say a lot of things that are going on in this manga is very suspicious. Moving on from that, we get to see the image of the guy who Shota drawn, and turns out this guy's a real guy. It's not a fictitious guy or anything. It's a real guy. The guy goes to school, so on and so forth. It's someone he's seen before. He then Shota then talks to him. He then responds back and says, "Hey, you want to go get something to eat later together?" They then sit together and they speak to each other. And the guy has like this ominous aura about him while they're speaking to each other. Um, uh, Shota believes that maybe this guy can read thoughts and everything. Maybe it's not a thought reading thing, it's just a body language thing, but there's something about him that's off. Just like there's something about Kuramatsu, his girlfriend, that's also off. I have yet to figure out what's going on because the manga does a good job with regards to revealing things slowly, but it's very strange. I thought this was going to be like a I lose my memory love story with Kuramasa, but this turns out to me more feels more like I lose my memory and someone might was probably trying to kill me or something. That's what comes across. This comes across to me. So eventually he makes friends with this guy and say, "You will be my very first friend," so on and so forth. I should cherish this moment by my heart because I probably will forget it. And eventually we see the picture of the guy that he was speaking to, and he's deciding whether or not he wants to be friends with Shota and whether he should block Shota or not as a friend. It's very strange that they would show this image of him looking at his cell phone and deciding whether he wants to be friends with Shota or not. So in my mind, that means he's in private. He decides whether he wants to block him or not. Could be a decision that this guy's either working with someone, he's not working with someone, he's just someone that has like this fascination with Shota, and there's a blind. The manga's doing a blind, or there's more going on. So he goes to the student exhibition office, production exhibition office, and of course the rep inside the office says, there's something wrong with you. Why are you always forgetting and stuff? Which is very strange to me because if some of the teachers might know what's going on with him, why do other teachers don't know what's going on with him? So I'm not sure yet, but eventually he goes to his art gallery or to the art gallery of the school. He then removes the picture that was placed up on the billboard. He requests for the guy that he met, Itsuki, in order to remove the artwork from the shelf. He then goes over to his locker. He can't find his locker because of memory loss. He then goes to see, by February, please collect your artwork. It can be removed forcibly and disposed of. Collect by 21st January, notice of work disposal. So because he has this memory loss, people have to constantly remind him of certain things that he needs to do. So he goes home, he removes the painting, and then he goes home thereafter to take a shower. Of course, Kuramatsu is there as well. She gives him a massage, and then he asks Kuramatsu about her eye patch, and what's going on with her eye patch, and how come she wears it all the time. She then tells him of what happens in the past with regards to how she came to have this damaged eye. Her eye is white from damage, and it's due to an accident that happened. A truck fell on her parents, or her parents' car with her siblings on the inside, and she woke up having her eye damaged on one side, and her other eye on the outside being fine, and she was the only person that survived the accident. And this is what she tells Shiota, and thereafter they eat some ice cream. But that doesn't really. Here's the thing about that, which I find very strange. Um, if she if that side of her face was damaged due to an accident, and her eye was damaged in the process, I believe her left side of her face would have also been damaged as well, as if it's not just her eye, but it only shows that her eye was damaged. And of course, Shota being the memory loss guy that he doesn't know that this could be a lie. Of course, he doesn't think of it as a lie because he doesn't have his memory and he cannot distinguish what is a lie from what is true. Um, but I believe she might be manipulating him. To a certain degree, she could be manipulating him. But I don't know if what she's saying is true or what she's saying is lie. It just seems very off. Everything seems very off about this girl. And eventually she decides to take off her top because she wants to have sex with the guy. But then she doesn't have sex with the guy. She was playing when messing with him and says, I'll see you later. I'm going home. And he says, what was that all about? So there's something going on with her that I can't fully grasp at the moment, but I have a feeling that she's very much involved with the accident. And I can't fully say that it's a mystery that she's very much involved in the accident because if you look at the manga cover of the first volume of this manga or this webtoon, it would show that she's wearing a very strange looking dress and she has blood stains on her face and she's smiling. So a chick smiling with blood stains, blue blood stains or blue flower stains on her face, wearing something that looks very strangely like a dress or wedding dress or something like that, or a dining dress. Those don't give off, senses of this is going to be a good person type of feel. I believe she's very much a bad person, but I also know there's certain things called blind and blinding your audience in order to believe something is what it is, but it's not. But I also believe that the obvious is probably present right here, and the manga could clearly be saying that she is what she is, and there's nothing to go around it. And the reveal might probably be how he expresses himself to find out this information about this person. And the discovery is what's the important factor. It's not that she's not a good person, it's that she's probably is a bad person, but the story is not about her. It's about him discovering this later on. So moving on, we get to see him throw out his artwork, which is here. He throws it out at the garbage dump. He then proceeds forward to the next section. We then see him calling this guy to help him throw it out. He then says, well, why would you throw out something like this? It's pretty damn good, so on and so forth. But knowing that you can't, you've lost your memories, you don't understand certain things with regards to this, I would say it's best to just move on from there and focus on things that you like more than anything else. So he then asks Itsuki, like, what do you like to do? Itsuki say, yeah, I like to do many things, but there's one thing I really want you to want to do right now, or tomorrow I want to do. I want to go to a certain place. He didn't say what place it was, and eventually it turns out the place he wanted to go was the movies uh, with Yume. And of course, on this day off, they went to the movies. They sat in the movie theater to watch the movie, and it's a mystery. I'm not sure if it's a crime mystery, but it's a mystery. And then, of course, the protagonist in the story, or whoever the characters in the story, whether it's a protagonist or not, has a gun, shot the gun, and of course, after shooting the gun, something sparked in Shota's mind, and Shota recalls in this moment someone in a bathroom after hearing a gunshot lying in a pool of blood, and him walking to a bathroom to open the door. So whatever happens while watching this movie, it sparked a type of memory in Shota's head. Shota goes to the bathroom to throw up and stuff because he felt bad about it, and then all of a sudden, It could be that because Shota threw up, Itsumi decides that he's going to throw up as well. But it's very weird. Like, how often does a guy, after seeing your vomit, want to throw up after seeing your vomit? Um, that's not something that's normal. Perhaps it's not the vomit at all. Um, I'm not sure about anything that has to do with Sumi, but Sumi is a very strange guy. You know, Sumi is a guy that this guy met, and he tells him that he has amnesia, and he behaves suspiciously about it, and then he reacts and decides, okay, I'll be a friend, and then he invites him to a movie, and then he starts to behave weird at the movie. So I believe Itsuki might be into Shota, might be a guy that's interested in Shota. Of course, the webtoon is not going to say so. Um, and of course, Shota isn't, can't get the hint that this guy might be into him. But his behavior has always been weird. Like he pulls his hand away as Shota's about to eat the popcorn from his hand. So it's the first indication that he believes Shota might be a weirdo, or he's frightened because he might be into a guy. He might be into him. So it seems more likely the case because he says it's the opposite. So he might actually be interested in Shota. But the weird part about it is his behavior with regards to everything. It's very um, reluctant and escape artist type of behavior with regards to every emotion that's happening with regards to him first meeting Shota and then the movies and so on and so forth. Uh, I'm not sure if he has any influence or any association with Kuramatsu, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a crime situation, or he has associated with Kuramatsu, or Kuramatsu knows something about this guy. Maybe before Shota fell and hit his head, maybe Kuramatsu saw both of these people before and something sparked in them. Maybe Kuramatsu is like a jealous girlfriend and type of stuff. I don't know what's going on yet, but either this guy is the bad guy of the story, or Kuramatsu is definitely the bad guy of the story. Either way, moving on to the next one, um, because I'm having spotlights on everything. Having spotlights at Kuramatsu, having spotlights on Shota, having spotlights on Itsuki. Everything that could be revealed to show exactly what's going on. Kind of like the same thing I did when I was playing the game Return of the Obra Dinn. If you have spotlights on certain characters and you identify certain things, who's most suspicious, and the more they do certain things and the more it comes across as suspicious, the larger the spotlight gets. That type of stuff. Now he says something here that's very interesting. I see you always put a lot of care into the shadows when you draw, and he used the word always. Now, no one used the word always unless they've been tracking you and following you, because always is a word meant to mean that you've known about this person for quite some time. It's not something, oh, say, I see you put a lot, and that's very good. But when you include the word always, that's kind of, you know the person quite well. So that's pretty much the end of that manga. Moving on to the third manga. It's a very interesting mystery manga. I need to know what's going on right there. That's my number two, simply because it's like a who done it type situation without who done it. It's more like process of elimination of finding out one's memories. But that said, if this is not the number two, or should I say, if X Time Over Oblivion Lovers is not the number two, I would say this is the number two. And this one is called Mason and the Man Eating Apartments. So I'm going to try to go fast with this one as well. Might not go as fast as I want to, but I'm going to try to go fast as well with this one. It's very important to get certain things off. I'm already an hour past. So let's see. I'm not sure about these translations, but I would say if those are accurate, then that's kind of weird. I believe that might be the translation of the person who's doing the dub for the actual Japanese wording here, but this is a very interesting manga. I believe it's more interesting than Oblivion Lovers, simply because this is a situation where the world seemed to have come to an end. Mr. Sun has decided to get very, very close to Earth, if this is even in fact Earth, but it's showing the sun being extremely huge next to this planet, and then it's showing the planet being roasted alive. So I'm assuming that everything on this planet has been decimated, and that only few spots on this planet are still alive. And it says here in single seconds, all time that we have left, single seconds, meaning that for each second of every life that's been lost, there's like a do-over. And then we see this huge looking um, apartment type structure shooting up from the earth like a tower. And at the sides, you could see like buildings at the sides, and these are apartment buildings. And inside, you see windows and so on and doors and stuff, because these are one interior apartments going all the way from the ground all the way up, and they're all attached to each other in this one huge cylindrical type thing. Now, this apartment is a man-eating apartment, as it's called, Mason and a man-eating apartment. So this apartment is very much alive. So my question is, who created this thing and how did it came to be? Was it an alien that landed on Earth and connected with organic byproducts and then fused with organic byproducts to create structures and stuff? Or was it something that was man-made? Nothing is revealed yet about this manga, other than the fact that it's a huge apartment and you have certain eyes that are present on top to show, I guess, to show time periods or to show uh, the nature of the apartment. Nothing is revealed as of yet. All we know, or should I say, all I know, is that every time I believe a person gets recycled or the structure of their apartment changes, the outside breaks and falls apart, and the inside gets to build like it's building up a new room or something like that, or a new apartment complex or something like that. And of course, the guy is on the air saying that he's like the DJ or something, talking about the apartment. And inside this apartment, people get to live forever, which is kind of weird. And eventually, well, not live forever, more like they live to a certain long, long, long time period than average human being would. And then they get recycled in time, which is weird because if the planet is literally roasting alive on the outside, um, I'm still, how can time be infinite in here if the planet is really roasting alive on the outside? Maybe it means time is infinite because everyone should be dead already, and time really makes things infinite here, but everyone really should be dead already. And if it wasn't for this apartment, everyone would be dead. So it's not like people are living infinite lives, and it's not like the planet, or maybe that's what it is. Maybe the planet is infinite at certain portions and certain locations, and maybe in time that sun will go away and the whole planet won't explode or something. Because if the whole planet explodes, then nothing is infinite here. Eventually, will die. So maybe it's just that the structure of the sun is way too close at the moment, and eventually it'll pass away or distance itself away. Nothing is fully explained at the moment other than what is explained here. And the people in here, they're not feeling any powers of the sun whatsoever. No heat. I mean, not to the point of heat as in they're boiling alive or anything, but they're having a nice good time, eating cotton candies and all this stuff. It's super weird. What's even weird, or weirder, is that the apartment gives life to these people. For every person that lives in this apartment, every person that lives in this apartment were born through the apartment itself. They weren't born in traditional ways of man and woman. They were born by the apartment creating them, like creating actual legitimate babies and stuff. And babies become adults and so on and so forth. So the apartment literally generates people, like cell animations or test tubes, and then they come out and then they all grow up. But the weird part about this whole place is that these aren't exactly normal looking humans or normal behave humans. Some people end up looking weird in their face. Some people come out looking deformed. Some people come out looking quite normal uh, in their age and in their face. Others look like they have some aspects of the apartment attached to them and to themselves. So we get to meet the protagonist of this story, and his name is this little boy here with the little goggles on his head, and his name is Mason. And the other boy on the other side, his name is Bertie. And both of them are just, kids having fun. They were the two little babies that were born through the machine that is the apartment, and they end up growing up to be a certain age. Now Mason is going to be what is called a landlord when he gets older. In other words, he's going to be in charge of certain things and maintain the society that is the apartment when he gets older. So his duty starts now as a kid, and as he gets older, so on and so forth, he's going to have more duties. So for the moment, he's having fun with the kids, with his friend, his childhood friend, Bertie, and he was given a landlord manual by I believe, the chieftain of the apartment, who's a weird looking guy who doesn't look healthy or normal in any sense. In other words, he might have, when he was born, he might have been dysfunctioned when he was born. Or maybe his appearance is a representation of something very unstable with regards to society. Maybe certain people are part of the council of handling everything that's going on within the apartment. Maybe they're sleeper cells. Maybe there are certain people who aren't exactly people hiding among them, because he looks very odd. Well, most of the people within the apartment complex, that's this huge tower, looks quite normal. He's the chairman of everyone. Or it could be an age thing, that factor that kicks in after a certain period of time. But regardless, um, Bertie and Mason meets up with each other. Bertie says, I can't, or should I say, Mason says, I can't spend a large amount of time with you anymore like I did in the past, because I have other duties I have to do um, as a landlord. Bertie says, I understand, but Mason says, well, if you understand, you must keep yourself safe, because I'm not going to be there to save you when the time comes. So if you see the apartment man, who is a character in the story, the apartment man, who is part of the apartment or in service to the apartment man, if you see the apartment man, you must run away, because the apartment man is a thing that supports the apartment and the survival of the apartment, and is willing to kill anyone and everyone who doesn't follow the rules of the apartment. So eventually Bertie decides to play hide and seek, or decides to go to an undisclosed area, an area that's probably off limits to certain people, and he discovers this thing, a secret that the apartment has, a secret that he should not have known about. And by discovering this secret, um, he then discovered that the secret in this place is what the previous landlord, who got, I believe, recycled, discovered. And maybe the previous landlord who discovered this knew that there was something off, and by discovering the secret, he or she knew that the secret would actually topple everything down if it was told to the public. So apartment man then shows up, and this is apartment man, a skinny yet tall looking creature, with an eye in his head, and sunken in, like, skeleton looking face and eyes here, with some like very vicious looking teeth, shredding looking teeth, and like eyes all over, like drawn eyes all over his body. Apartment man. There's a weird thing about apartment man, is that apartment man seems to be a huge, like, clay looking, golem looking structure. It doesn't seem to come across as something that's humanoid. It seems to be come across as something that's man-made. like a type of design created by the apartment, which would make more sense that this if this thing is not a person, then it's an automaton in service to the apartment itself. So Bertie comes across it, and the apartment man says it's your time. And the next day, I believe, or a couple of hours, I don't know, um, on the telecom from the announcer guy, he basically says another person has been recycled, and that person is called Bertie, and Bertie is 14-year-old Bertie, and Mason is shocked by this. Mason is saddened by this. He then asks about why do people get recycled? Why is it so important for people to get recycled? If the building is trying to change itself, why do people being recycled has to be part of that system? Like people could die from many different things. Why is human beings recycle a part of that system? Says he doesn't know, but because of that recycle is the reason how other people are born. Since people aren't born through man and woman type traditional means, the apartment is the only one that gives life to certain people, and you could only give life to certain people, other people being recycled. And he says there's something wrong about that. Like who decides? He's like, who decides when a person gets to be recycled and when not to be recycled? So he goes about trying to discover the secret of what's going on and why this is going on. But he didn't go in to discover this with regards to what's happened to his friend. He goes to discover this as in what's happening in his past. So he tells the announcer guy what he was trying to discover back in the past before, and then he saw someone getting consumed by this thing here through the apartment man. And he saw that person getting consumed by that thing there. And that apartment man saw them, and Bertie rescued him from probably meeting a fate that happened here. So he tells of him first meeting apartment man, seeing apartment man, and how Bertie first saved him. And so he told the announcer guy this, and the announcer guy says there's nothing he could do about it. And so Mason goes to read the landlord manual. He throws it to the ground and says, what's the point of being a landlord if all you do is service towards the apartment, which will consume your friends? He's like, I'm not going to live my life in order to feed people to this apartment and stuff. So eventually he walks out the door, and right in front of him was the apartment man. Now at this point I thought, Mason is dead meat, because the apartment man is basically this thing that walks through shadows in the apartment. He doesn't actually is in the community of the apartment. You don't see him walking about. He's only within deep places in the apartment, shadow places. So I thought at this moment Mason is dead, but it turns out Mason is not dead. Apartment man came to give him something he pulls out of his stomach, pretty gross. Apparently Bertie had made a birthday cake for him and for Mason, since they were born in the same day, through the apartment. He gave him a birthday cake. Really messed up. The very thing that fed your friend to the apartment or consumed that person, or which is more likely that he fed Bertie to the apartment, came to your freaking door, and then he gave you the birthday cake, like real sadistic, messed up stuff. So Mason is pissed off at this moment, and he's determined to find out how to stop this from happening, or what happened to his friend. It's like Mason knows his friend is probably dead. That's an obvious, but he wants to know exactly where it happened and why did it happen to his friend. So he's going to go investigate this. But if he was told by the council, by the chairman, and by the other people that don't go the route of the predecessors, of your previous predecessors, who was also snooping around, trying to find out what's going on in the apartment and trying to undo things that should not be undue. So everyone's believing that Mason is going to end up the same way his previous predecessors are, getting killed by the apartment. But This is the story of Mason and a man eating apartment. So it's more than likely, if he does get destroyed or consumed by the apartment, he is going to reveal certain things to the reader to show that, okay, this is how you take down an apartment. Eventually, the apartment is going to be taken down, or the big reveal is going to happen, for which certain things that would be normal would be changed due to him. So, because that this is his story. So he goes off to see the council. He sits in the council room. The councilman shows up, wearing his council, looking like a cultish leader type stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they're freaking cult members. Bad cult members, not good cult members. I don't think there's ever been good cult members, but yeah, historically they've never really been good cult members. But then again, um, yeah, they've never really been good cult members. I mean, because the occult has to do with the studies of things that don't follow the standards with regards to religion. It's typically is associated with science and with an old school belief of religion in order to summon angels or summon demons or summon wind spirits or summon harvesting, basically using magic. Occult is association with magic and magic use of magic with esoteric characters. And of course, religion deviated from the esoteric, saying man should not tangle with things associated with God. So yeah, a cult is different from cult. Seeing cult seems to be people who are using magic in a bad way, whereas occult is just the science of the whole thing itself. So moving on from that, I'm not going to get into that because that could be like a whole freaking um, book if I really wanted to speak on it, or a 3 hour video on that stuff. I used to be heavy into that, learning about that stuff. But I don't really care as much now. In fact, I only care about the science of it all still, and the esoteric part of it all still. In order to help me to see certain things from our perspective, not anything else. So moving on from that, we get to see these chairs come up in the room magically after the chairman snapped his fingers, and they all look like insectoid type chairs, like come straight out of the apartment, and the walls are like eyes and everything. It's like the apartment is watching them. The apartment is watching them. It's like they. It feels like they're living inside of the body of the apartment. Like, like these people feel like they're white blood cells and stuff. You know, white blood cells of the body. And the apartment is the body. Like, man, like, come on. Once, if you're white, like, if I, if I was to give life to my white blood cells and they were to understand what they are, who they are, and where they are, I think humanity would come to an end because your body would try to free itself from itself. But I don't believe that's the situation that's going on here. I believe the situation that's going on here is that this apartment is an alien thing that invaded this planet, and in some ways it saved the life of certain people, but by doing so, it uses them as fuel or using certain things as fuel in order to save itself. Maybe it's like a parasite that can only survive off others. And once you discover that it is a parasite and it's not something noble or something good, like once it's destroyed, you know, you're able to free yourself from it. But the outside world is kind of screwed due to the sun. So I guess the whole purpose of this manga would be how to resist the powers of the sun and survive without the need of the apartment. That's what fascinated me about this manga. And moving forward, we get to see all these little nonchalant, Rick and Morty type characters. Um, some of them are, and then we get to see some of them are some doofy ass looking characters. Moving on from that, because they're all douchebags to be honest with you. I believe they all service to apartment in one way or another, and screw anyone over if they had the ability to, especially if they're following the chairman. Maybe some of them are reluctant and are doing so only because they have no choice. Either way,
Bertie, or should I say Mason, says he's going to take on the role of his first role as a landlord, as garbage collecting guy. So he decides to speak to the chairman about this, his first role. And then he asked about what's happened to Bertie. And then, of course, the chairman says, do not go the old way of the landlord, Mason. It's a bad thing. Has warned him again. People have been saying that to him throughout this in the first chapter, the first page of the manga moving forward. So he goes to do his duty with regards to garbage dump, and the garbage dump guy shows up, and the garbage dump guy is some giant-sized type of creature, like or a giant man, who's on like a motorcycle, something straight out of freaking Miyazaki type stories. Very weird. And he basically is supposed to take out the garbage, but he decides to peace out because he didn't get the funds he need or the funds he wanted to get with regards to that. So I believe Mason decides to chase him down, jump onto garbage bins. That's part of the little scooter he's on, and he goes to his place. He asks him like, "Why did you follow me here? Why did you jump onto my crates and stuff?" And then he goes inside to sit in his place on his couch and everything inside of his home. And he get to see like a Led Hinberg here, like a Led Zeppelin type of thing. Um, he's into music, and apparently he used to be human, or at least something humanoid type. Takes his mask off. He looks like a big hairy type, cousin it type thing. Um, and of course, being that he speaks to Mason and says, "Oh, you remind me of your previous landlord. She was just like you." And I think I never mentioned it before, but I believe Mason is a girl. And so moving on from that, we get to the next scene, and then Mason said, "I need to find out about my friend Bertie." He says, "Well, you're not gonna like what you see if you go to the garbage compactor type thing. There's certain things in this apartment are best not to be seen." And eventually, he goes and he sees like this huge looking mount, like a garbage compactor. Is a huge looking mount in the head. I look like something straight out of the Muppets that eat food and eat metal and eat stuff, and crunches it down and put it back into an apartment and consumes them. And I guess this is how the apartment and certain structures are fueled and built within the apartment, both organic, metal, and so on. I believe the apartment basically can eat anything and use anything with regards to fuel and to create certain structures. And eventually, Bertie jumps inside of the stomach of this thing because he discovered that something is in there that the creature inside wanted to tell him about the energy capsule that he found, and this energy capsule is necessary for the survival of the apartment or the survival of the culture within the apartment. Is very expensive. I believe he gives that to the garbage dump guy as payment in return for him to take out the garbage and stuff. So he appreciates it and says, "I don't know how you knew, but because he's a landlord, for some reason he knew that that was inside of the stomach of the garbage dump thing." So there's something about being a landlord that's very strange. Like landlords seem to be able to tell and understand things within the apartment that normal people would not be able to, as if it's a sixth sense. But it's not just a sixth sense like a hunch. It's like a sixth sense like I know, rather than just a hunch. So he asks about the apartment man to the garbage dump guy, and the garbage dump guy basically say the apartment man is darkness personified. So he's just a representation in physical form that looks like a man, but he's a representation of the apartment in that physical man form, um, to do the duties of recycling people. It's like, whereas I recycle garbage and dump garbage and metals and stuff, his duty, the apartment man, is to recycle flesh creatures. Um, and that's why he takes on the form of a man that walks around, because he believes the apartment cannot mobilize itself in order to do this, so he creates like a automaton type thing in order to do this. So not sure if that's the case yet, but at least that's what the manga is hinting at. So Bertie goes back to give them the letter from the garbage dump guy, and the garbage dump guy says he's taking out the garbage, but he's billing them for repairs and stuff, which is cost more than the amount of money that they were going to be paying for the garbage itself. So the repair stuff costs more than the amount of to take out the garbage. So they're kind of screwed. But Bertie doesn't seem, I mean, Mason doesn't seem to care because for some reason Mason has this feeling that the people on the council doesn't give a damn about the people that are inside of the apartment. So, you know, screwing the council over is just something that Mason feels is a normal thing to do, but he's not going to screw them over intentionally. He's just going to do it as part of the job and not care. But you could tell that Mason doesn't give a damn about the council. So he then meets this guy called Mirror or Morse, and Morse is like looks invisible, and he says he's from the 10.5 floor, and he says, well, really? Those 10.5 floors like unknown floors, like floors that aren't natural. Like any decimal floor is like a floor that's off limits or doesn't exist anymore, like a zoned out floor. And so Morse tells him like, well, there's a way to get to those floors, and it's hiding in plain sight on your floor, and it looks in like something in the form of a trash can. So they go down the trash can, which has a ladder attached to the trash can, and they end up in one of the decimal floors. And the decimal floors has an elevator. Now, normally in the apartment, of any floor within the apartment, no apartment floors has an elevator except floors that are decimals. And no one lives on the decimal floors. So finding this elevator is something like a secret of traversing floors that no one knows about because it's not commonplace. And how would you know about these things? Because no one would tell you about it. So for decades, maybe centuries, no one knows about these things unless you stumble across them. So moving forward, Morris tells them that, okay, we're now in this elevator, going in this elevator. A huge dragonfly almost comes and attacks them. They got by the dragonfly, got inside of the elevator, and got off by the 10.5 floor, the floor where Morris is from. And Morris says, yeah, this is the floor that I'm from. There's no one really here, but it's like an oasis. You know, you have your water, you have your trees. And he says, this is fascinating. And like, wow, like no one knows about this place. So he looks at the floor and it says to him 10.49 floor and says, where am I? And moving on from that, Morris ends up, I believe Morris ends up pushing Mason through the floor, and he fell to the 10.49 floor. So there was a 10.5 floor, and he's falling to like by a percentage more downwards to the 10.49 floor. And of course, Mason says, well, I don't trust you because you pushed me down to this floor, so we need to go back up. But I don't know what's going on. I don't know about these floors. I don't know about this building, but all this stuff is new to me. So he meets the real Morrison, the real Morse. The fake Morse was someone who looks like a shadow, but the real Morse looks like a regular person. And so Morse introduced Mason to the Hand Man or something like that, or Arm Man. And Arm Man used to be the arms of a previous apartment man. And Arm Man basically says, don't lump me with apartment man. I'm just the arms that used to be part of an apartment man. It's all weird and stuff. But eventually, everything is starting to reveal itself in context and with regards to the story. It means character stories themselves, as well as individual stories with regards to what's going on in sections. So Armin basically says, well, you really got to be a dumb person to find a floor like this, or you're very brave, or so on and so forth. He says, I'm cooking rice and so on and so forth. And he says, what is it? More than you can count. I retired though, and now I'm a cook with fried rice running through my veins. I never looked at it before, but I realized there was something missing when I came towards the end. Fried rice running through my veins. I'll come back to that one because I believe the chairman was eating fried rice. So moving on from that, we then get to see Morris takes Mason down to a room, and in this room he shows him that there are a bunch of apartment men lying all over the floor, and he says, "Well, when the R-man tells you there are more apartment men than you can count, it should like signal to you that what you think about this apartment is far deeper than you believe. There's not one guy or one apartment man who's been servicing this apartment for centuries and stuff. They're more like recycled automatons. They're more like things are duties or duty bound parasites attached to the apartment in order to service to it. Like once an apartment man duty is over, he either comes here to die or he spits out here to die or he's transported to this floor or he returns to this floor and just falls apart like a clay man. So moving forward, we get to see Morse talks more to Mason and tells him like each floor that's within the apartment has like these invisible walls or walls with holes in them. That if you stuck your head through them, you'll be able to see through the other room. Like every floor has this. Most people don't know about this because most people have never tried to test this out or to see for themselves. But most floors have these things. Like how you saw me through the previous floor is because I was able to stick my head through them so you'd be able to see me through those floors. So he pushes his head through the floor so he could be able to see into the next room. And that's how you would see a person's head through a floor or a creature's head through a floor. It's not that the head is decapitated or anything. It's just that they're looking from one room into the next room, and from the perspective of how the room is designed, a person could be standing on the grass and stuff and seeing a person's head in the floor, but on the other side of that room, that person is standing upright looking through like something like a glass or a door in order to see to the other side. So moving on from that, the apartment is very strange and very structurally strange. Everything is intertwined and adjacent or octangular to each other, and its perspective is kind of off. Maybe they're fused in certain ways that normal people would think they're all linear but or parallel to each other, but they're not. So moving on from that, we get to see I believe the chairman speaking to one of the members on the council and saying something is happening. The apartment is behaving weird. The apartment's doing things it's not supposed to. The person said he look into it, and this person who have this thing with this like eye thing on it has like a little creature in the eye that has many eyes attached to it, and it comes out through here. It's very weird. But like I said, when certain people are born through the apartment, other people have certain malfunctions of the body or deformities of the face or deformities of the body. Maybe the chairman's the same way too, but I believe the apartment is present in every individual in this place, and secretly he knows what people are going to do through because it's attached to them in some ways. Like it knows the behavior of certain people, or maybe even controls the behavior of certain people. But who knows? I'm not sure yet. Mason then speaks to Morse some more in regards to what's going on, and Morse is saying, "I find this letter on this floor in the 10.5 floor, and that I took you to." And Morse's head starts to hurt, and then all of a sudden, um, Morse looks at it and he says, "Well, the letter says to look inside my bag," and this Morse looks inside the bag and says, "Well, there's nothing." Or Mason looks inside the bag and says, "There's nothing inside the bag." And then Morse disappears. Mason says, "What the hell is going on?" He looks at the notice, and the notice basically says, "The search of the floor has reached its ended. Energy supply will be shut down. All residents must move out immediately. Over. Delivered by telegram agent Morse." And so this was delivered by Morse, like probably I don't know how long ago it could be. decades ago, years ago, centuries ago, who knows. But Morse was never there to begin with. Morse was gone from the very beginning. So that was the end of apartment, Mason and apartment, and the man eating apartment. So what do I think of that? I believe it's it's not as mysterious as um, X Time Over, and it's not as you want to find out what's going on as X Time Over and suspicious as X Time Over, but the art is done better, the text is done better, the design is done better, the mystery is somewhat more interesting. That's why I kept saying to myself, if I was to switch Mason and the Man Eating Apartment with Oblivion Lovers, Mason and the Man Eating Apartment would be number 2, and Oblivion Lovers would be number 3. So it's either one or two. I believe it actually could be number 2. So moving on to the fourth one. Um, uh, let's see here. Fourth one. All right, here it is. So you'll probably hear a lot of noise from the back and outside because people are probably coming in now from work and stuff. But I got to get this done, so I'm going to try to move a little bit faster with regards to this. So this one is called the Unnamed Sea. I believe it's being in the 4th place is the best place for it to be, because it's very interesting, but some of the dialogue is off. It doesn't do a lot of artwork with regards to Manhua or Manhua webtoon level. This feels more like a storybook type of Oliver Twist type of picture book story. It's a light novel, feels like very much like a light novel, expresses us as a light novel with certain images in it. But the artwork is fantastic. So this is the story of the Unnamed Sea, and the image you see here is present. The artwork is great. Unnamed Sea. So I don't need to say much about this one. I will let this one speak for itself with regards to the text here. I'll keep quiet for that. So anyone could read. See, I'm fascinated with regards to this one as well. Unfortunately, there's only been 3 chapters with regards to this. So this is the Unnamed Sea. First image is a mother speaking to a kid about what's going on, telling him about a storybook with regards to certain creatures and life within the ocean. Could remember countless bedtime stories, all started with the same beginning, and every story is the protagonist should always experience similar adventures. In the end, they would finally rescue their lover from the abyss, blah blah blah. And the person's the little kid here, that's right next to his mother, is the protagonist of this story, Raleigh, and he's hearing a story from his mother, and his mother tells him of the story of um, the Mirage Island, which is going to be a major factor with regards to the overall story of the Unnamed Sea. So the Mirage Island is basically an island, mysterious island of legend in the southern seas, and it was occupied by 2 groups of people. One was the Dongli clan, and the other was, I believe, uh, the Dayu clan, and both of them lived in harmony together. One was more agricultural, and the other one was more philosophical and machine work type. They were explorers type, like to discover how to use things and how to use invention and magic and so on and so forth. Eventually, time passes, and both of them came across a creature that flew through the sky and stuff, and through the waters. And ancient times, these two tribes were invaded by this strange monster called Hugh. And Hugh basically harassed them for a long time until I believe a woman was born into, I believe, the Denu clan, and she was like 10 feet tall, very tall woman, like a giant, and she has like 2 pupils within her eyes, so she wasn't a normal woman. She was an abnormal, very strange aberration of a woman, and she carried a spear in her hands, and then she moved around a lot throughout servicing the Denu clan, and she eventually killed the Hugh creature, but in the process she got damaged by this huge creature, and in doing so being damaged by this huge creature, she bled out onto the tree of the ancient tree of the island, and her blood soaked into the ancient tree and into the ground of the ancient tree, and eventually it gave life to this little glowing thing that's happening here. And moving forward from that into the story, you got to see more from the Denu tribe, and eventually they became greedy because after the Zayu, the woman who died after killing their great adversary, they wanted, and they eventually gained power of immortality and so on and so forth. So they were blinded by greed, and they wanted to um, get her back, or in order to survive and to be eternal again. And so what they did in order to be eternal again, because they were eternal before when she was alive, I believe. So what they did is they took, because they knew blood resuscitated the tree, and the tree was dying. So they took the Danu tribe, the Dongli tribe, and they sacrificed them in order to revive the tree with their blood. So they needed lots of blood, so they massacred the entire village of the Dongli. And this was a big no-no because voluntarily, when Zenyu or Zhu died, her blood was due to sacrifice of defeating the enemy of Hu. Here they murdered these people and then sacrificed them through the tree. So the blood that was given to the tree was tainted, and kind of this ancient tree kind of knew that it was tainted and that these people were all messed up and everything. So the tree retaliated and sank the entire island. And by sinking the entire island, it killed off all the Denu people on the Mirage Island and made sure no one survived. It also did a very strange and terrible thing to them. It transformed their body into mermaid type, like half fish, half human. So they got to resemble the body of the very creature that used to harass them, both them and Dongli people. As part of their punishment is to look like the creature that used to attack them a long time ago. So they were cursed to forever linger around the island and to forever be deformed to look like this thing. So, they deserved it because they were freaking mass murderers. So I don't feel sorry for them at all. So moving on from that, we get to see her finishing the story of what's going on with her son, and I believe the story continues thereafter after he falls asleep and says he doesn't remember anything else after he goes to sleep of him being next to his mother and his mother telling the story. And it's very suspicious that his mother knows so much about the story, but I'll get into that later. We then get into kind of like the meat of this design of this Manhua, and it's very different from other manhwa, because I keep saying Manhua, but manhwa, because it plays off like a light novel Huckleberry Finn type story where you get pictures every now and again, but afterwards you get text. Most of it is just text that tells you everything that you're reading. It plays out very much like most light novels do, because I believe it is, and very few people will like this type of art form. I like this type of expressive art form, and like this type of way of actually reading a manga or a manhwa, but I find it to be very interesting. Very few and very often, this stuff is very rare and doesn't come across the table all the time. So the store that our young little boy has grown up into, and his name is Raleigh, he's on a place called the Nautilus, and Nautilus is like an antique store. And inside the Nautilus, you get to hear Raleigh's age. His name is Phineas Rolle, 19 years old, light brown hair, light brown eyes, and so on and so forth. He inherited this store, and he's next to the bakery woman, and he's been doing this for quite some time. And he receives certain letters because what he does is his antiques gets sent to him through a distributor whose name is Lee. I believe he's related to a guy, although it's written in Charles tone voice. I believe he's related to a guy named Charles. Don't know how that will play out later throughout this manhwa, but I like the art form that's going here. I like how the letters written. I like the postage stamps. I like the backdrops of shadows with regards to the newspapers. I like the flowers that are presented. I like the text next to the design of the artwork. It's very distinct and very different. I especially like the design of the world that's presented here, and structures of the world, like the buildings, especially the buildings, the vases, the old timey clocks, the curtains. Everything is done hand, and you could tell it's all hand done, and then watercolor painted, and it's very done. It's very good, and it's very detailed. And it's very, I wouldn't say it's 100% original, but compared to other manhwas, as well as manhwas, as well as mangas, it's its own thing, and it feels very distinct. But the only thing I would say would be off is that for every image, it then goes into a text of dialogue with regards to at least one or two paragraphs attached to it. Not many people who read mangas or comic books or manhwas would appreciate this, but this is going down the light novel path where the images and the text are separated from each other. So that's kind of a traditional thing. But the artwork is beautiful. It's done quite magnificently, and it's all hand done, and you could tell it's hand done, and it's done quite well, and it's distinct. Um, and so what happened is Raleigh found that this lantern, which was commissioned and then sent to his store by a dealer called Lee, and he touches it. He puts his glove on to inspect it and to unwrap the box and stuff. And then he touches the top of it, and then all of a sudden the water inside start to rough and tumble around, and then it moves around and waves around, and it lights up from the inside. And then he reads something about, I believe he read something about light from water or something, light from the water of this lantern. Is that from the scales of mermaids, of traditional folk tales? So he was curious of how the light within the water is glowing, if there's no like oil or anything to make it uh, a traditional lantern or kerosene to make it light up. And the oil inside of the water is, I believe, mermaid oil. So, but he doesn't know how it operates yet. So he goes to Lee to speak to him with regards to where the lantern might come from, but he doesn't tell him that he has it. He just asks him certain things with regards to the lantern. And of course, this is Lee, and Lee is out of like a museum. And Lee says, "How you doing, little Raleigh? How's everything going? Blah blah blah." Lee is the standard distributor of certain goods within the city, within Chinatown, which he gets most of his expenditures from. And of course, Lou, who helps Lee, is the one that gets the stuff transported from place to place. And where Lou gets this stuff from, he doesn't know. But Lee and Lou seems to have like this little conflict of interest, and they don't like each other because one behaves like he's an aristocrat, and the other behaves like he's not an aristocrat, but he knows that he is. So none of this is important to Phineas, however, because Phineas's sole purpose is to discover what's going on within the lantern itself, because he'd been having these strange recurring dreams associated with his mother, associated with the story his mother told him, and associated with mermaids. So he wants to know more about the artwork that's associated with the lantern, but he doesn't reveal it fully to Lee yet, because he's not fully sure that Lee is being completely honest with him, and Lee and him aren't really friends. They're more of necessary 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 um necessary alliances, or necessary acquaintance. um yeah, need-based acquaintance, I would say. So that's what I would describe Lee as. So moving on from that, we get to the next image that shows Phineas having a dream, and a dream with this eye that's being shown within the center of this object, circular areas, and it shows various different images and water flowing around. And of course, he believes the eye is kind of an aware thing that is ominous and that is looking at him. And eventually, but he doesn't know what it is yet. He just knows that it feels like it's looking at him. I already know what it is, and of course, obviously, if you're watching this, you already know what it is. It's the island of the Mirage Island, and the things probably that's right in the center that look like an eye is probably the tree itself, and it's probably calling out to him, like it's looking out, looking to him, as in like a beacon or something. I don't know if that's the case yet, but directly after that goes away, he sees another image as this dream is fading away of his mother seen within that dream. And he's seeing his mother from that point of view thereafter, after seeing the eye. Um, I would say it's very suspicious that his mother was telling him the story, and all of a sudden he started dreaming of his mother in the Mirage Island, so on and so forth. But you know, if logically he believes his mother's somewhat, I think he knows his mother somewhat knows something about all this, and that his mother kept something away from him. I believe he's starting to figure that out. But yeah, the idea and design of everything that's going on here is quite fascinating. The whole this whole manhwa or manhwa is fascinating, and how things are done within this light novel type manhwa is fascinating. You know, I like the appearance of how everything looks jagged here, and eventually it will close up and seal up, like something straight out of Dragon Ball movie 12 or something like that, some Jamimba type stuff, or I don't know, some Wanda types, WandaVision, like it's falling apart at seams right here and then close up. So it's quite interesting. Moving off from that, we get to see him wake up, and once again, the artwork here is fantastic. Whoever did the artwork for this is great. Um, it shows him waking up and looking out the window to the water, to the sea that's next to his little place, harbor, right next to his little place. And then directly after, we get to see that our boy here, Raleigh, is not just an antique dealer or an antique collector, he's also an inventor. So he made this little robot puppy that's right here to do some of his duties throughout the antique store. And it rolls around, and so he's an inventor. He's like a steampunk type guy. And this I guess you could say this Manuel feels very steampunk like. And then he gets to see Raleigh, who he also makes an elevator for himself over here, which takes him up to the various different floors. So the kid is not just smart and understand how the history of antiques work and how the history of objects work, but on the side he's actually an inventor as well. So he makes his own elevator, so he's a good engineer. He makes his own robot, so he's a good, well enough engineer to understand how to. If he's able to create an elevator, I'm pretty sure he's able to make a robot, or vice versa. But then he shows the two little cats. He has two little cats inside of his house who are his pets, who he found that were stray. I believe he found one of them was stray, and then another came with him. But they're shown very cutely to be playing with the little robot here. And now that I look at it, this robot like looking dog is not really like a dog. I believe it's a mouse. It's designed to look like a mouse. I wonder if he created the little roly poly robot to look like a mouse, something in association to his two cats, because they're very cute little design cats, and they're chasing after it like a normal like cats would. So moving on from that, we get to see him remembering when he was a kid and his father teaching him about astrology. And I'm not sure exactly what was the point of this scene, other than the fact that he reminiscing about his father and about human beings exploring the vast reaches of the universe and stuff. But I'm trying to figure out what this has to do with anything associated with story, other than the artist simply showing his artwork from the perspective of the father and design of the kid, and of course the book on the table itself. So yeah, not too sure about this one. So moving on from that, I believe the last image I have here goes to this is Phineas going through certain books, specifically on mermaids and um, Southern Seas mermaids specifically, and wondering more and more and more about whether this fiction or this lore or the legend of what his mother was telling him about Mirage Island, whether it's a legend or whether there's some truth to it, because it's mysterious to him how a lantern would stay lit without some type of thing to initiate. I wouldn't say initiate, but to like a pilot light to make sure once the pilot is on, boom, the gas goes on, and boom, the lantern goes on, something like that. But here, all he did was touch the top of the lantern, and of course, the water started to move around, and then eventually the light in the water lit up. There was no gizmo or anything within the lantern to make the light glow, and the light glow wasn't normal light glow from oil. It was a greenish type light glowing, so it's not normal oil. So he believes that it could be mermaid oil, but he knows that mermaids aren't real, and that's the reason why he's investigating this, because normally that doesn't make sense, especially how the gizmo of the lantern operates. So moving on from that, I would say this will be the end of this. In context with regards to the Emperor Min, tomb thousands of years ago, Emperor Min was tyrannical, unrestrained through his history. Later years became an immortal. I believe he became immortal through the lantern, but who knows? But for right now, I would say because there are only 3 chapters to this Manhwa, this light novel, I would have to wait for it to move forward. Now, normally I would put this at the 5th spot because the subject matter with regards to this is not as fascinating as seeing like zombies or man-eating apartments happening. So, but the artwork and the mystery, and especially the uniqueness of how the story is set up in paragraph form rather than traditional bubble type context bubble form, is a change of pace. That's all I would say. It's just a change of pace. So the if this is not the 4th, I would put this as the 5th, and the 5th one is going to be the end has come, and this the 5th one being the end has come starts with this image, and this is the image that I'm going to present right here with regards to the end, which is has come, the zombie apocalypse or the infective apocalypse, and this is also a Korean one, and yeah, and this comic is a webtoon one, and so I would say the text with regards to using in this Korean one is not that good. In fact, the artwork for this is also not that good. That's why I put this one at the 5th place. Most of the male characters somewhat look the same, and some of the female characters look differently, but some of them also look the same. So when it comes to the main protagonist, I believe the main protagonist is called Jeong, and when it comes to this woman, and her name is Henya, Yena, Han Yena. Yeah, her name is Han Yena. These are 2 characters that look very different from each other, and just like Unnamed Sea, the text is placed on not on the image itself, like traditional comics is deviated from it into a separate panel or a separate box, so to not influence the actual image of the artwork itself. Not sure if that's a good thing, but most people like to read things when it comes to comics on the same panel itself. But some people, especially in the webtoon world, prefer to have it separate from each other. But it really doesn't matter if the context, and the image, or should I say, the content and the context of the story is good. It doesn't really matter. It's just if it becomes too irritating and placed separately all the damn time, it does become annoying, especially when you're traveling vertically or horizontally to look at words over and over again. So Han Yena is here, and she's looking at the destruction of the world. The world has gone to shit. She's with the main protagonist, John, and he's saying that, why are you following me? You know, you hated me when I was in school. You've always disliked me because I was poor. You were a rich person. You're an Instagram person. You know, you were always a popular kid. Why are we hanging out together? She says, I don't have anyone to uh, go to, my family and everything. Everyone is dead, so on and so forth. So we only hang out with each other. It's like, all right, well, if you're going to hang out with each other, you can't be treating me like shit all the time. Otherwise, you're on your own. And directly after, zombies start chasing after them. So he grabs her hand and they peace out and they run. And then we get that was a flash forward to the future of them running from zombies. So now we're going to go back into the past, and we're going to go back in the past to see certain things from the past. And my phone is going off. Nope, you're going to have to wait. So moving on from that, we get to the next scene. And this next scene is things going on in parallel to each other. And parallel to each other is that the person who designed, at least the person who designed the structure of this world, is good at designing the structure of this world, even though designing people is not that great. Um, Here, here, and here. If you draw a straight line going forward here, I would say this is like 15 degrees here, 15 degrees here, 15 degrees here, here. So the person at least understand the perspective of how to do things. So they're great at designing objects in this world. I would say this is probably their bread and butter with regards to this. Not so much characters, but more environment and environmental design. Some artists are very good at that. Others are not. I would say the person who did the character designs here aren't that good at character designs here. The feet is a bit off and stuff. But that's not a big deal because the focus here is not really, I believe, the design of the characters. It's more like a survival story. So the story is the centerpiece here. But if you're going to do art, you should be good at one or the other. If you're not good at the environment, you should be good at drawing characters. So this guy wakes up, his mom puts something on the board and says, eat your food, go to school. He puts his uniform on, he goes to school, he looks up at the apartment where Han Yena lives in with her rich family and stuff. And he says, people like that wouldn't understand me anyway. He goes to school, he gets bullied by the bully guy called Park something. His name is Park Jeong, something like that. And Park knocks him to the ground. He's been a bully for quite some time. Then Han Yena speaks to Park and says, why are you always messing around with this guy? And I don't want to, mess with like poor people all the time. You might catch something, blah, blah, blah. And then Park says, well, you want to hang out with us and stuff. She says, I'm not going to hang out with you. The last time I tried to hang out with you, you invited me to John's place. And, I'm not into that. He's a poor guy and all this stuff. Now, this seems very much like some crazy stuff you see online of people making online content of, I come from a poor family, I need money and all that crap. So I started to get a little disinterested in this manhwa. But then slowly but surely, it started to lead towards more zombie apocalypse like. So less fall on things associated with romance and more and money or all that garbage, and more falls with regards to the story itself, which is the zombie apocalypse. So we get to have a little context with regards to Han Yena, and she's an Instagram person. She's a VIP. She's very smart. She gets good grades and everything. So everything that John is saying with regards to her is that she's a top tier type of student in their school. She's popular and all this. She lives in a great place. And a person like him would never hang out with someone like her. But because he's bullied so much, he decided one day, I'm going to just go on top of this building that she lives in and jump off the top of this building and commit suicide. So after getting beat up by Park so many times, one day he decides to go to her place. And I'm not sure how he was going to get on the roof, but before he got on the roof, she sees him there. She says, what are you doing at my place? Shouldn't you not be at my place? I don't like poor people hanging about by my place. So he said, fuck it, I'm going to go home. I'm going to play some video games. So he goes home and plays some video games. And then he reminisces on the fact that what just happened, that Han Yena actually saved him from killing himself. So, but he then says to himself, well, even though she saved me from killing myself, I know she's still a bitch. I know Park is still a bully. and I don't need to go to that school anymore. I'm going to drop out as of today, so I don't have to deal with this type of bullshit in my life anymore. And I might go to a different school, but I don't have to deal with them anymore. That very same day, um, his friends peace out from playing games with him. Two of his friends were online. They both peace out. All of a sudden, he's wondering what's going on, and then he hears someone bang on the door of his house, and he doesn't know what's going on, but he know that the news says it's total chaos. So he goes to his door, opens his door, and right in front of his door, I don't know why he looked through the peephole of his door and sees the man that lives upstairs from him. Thought the guy was drunk, but as he opens the door, he sees that the guy have a huge stab wound in his chest, and realizes there's something definitely off about the guy. That it's more than him being drunk. The guy then attacks him. He kicks them off, and then he runs back into his house. And after running back into his house, he sees an emergency alert that broadcasts on the television as well as on his phone. It says, if you come across people acting erratic, stay inside your house. Do not go outside. It goes off again and again and again to make sure everyone gets the message. Like, this is not just a standard alert or some bomb alert or something. This is like serious. So everyone is told to stay inside the house, so he stays inside the house. But then after about a day goes by, he goes outside his house in order to see that if the man is still there. Either it's a day or a couple of hours later, he goes outside to see if the man is still there. The man is not there. He's left. The blood is everywhere. And he then goes back inside and decide, well, do I have enough food in order to survive this zombie apocalypse? He doesn't know if it's a zombie apocalypse yet, but he says he has enough food to survive for more than a few days, for more than a week. Food that could last him for about a good 2 weeks to about a month. So, but he eventually says that will eventually comes to an end. So he has to find a way in order to get to the store, get back to the store, and have consistent food. And he also knows that if he's able to signal someone from the roof, he'll be able to communicate with someone from the roof. But there's a guy that lives in the roof apartment. Yes, this manga has like a guy that has a roof apartment, and he has to go up to the roof in order to see, he could speak to the guy that's on the roof apartment. Eventually, the guy that's on the roof apartment is a guy that looks strangely like Park. Like I said, the guy who does the manga, or the guy who does the design or the artwork for the people in this, typically has the male looking all the same, because this guy looks like Park as well. His girlfriend and him are dead in the bathroom. They're both zombied out. I'm not sure if she's zombied, but he's definitely zombied. He attacks him. He falls to the floor, where he runs away. He trips over his feet, and then the zombie attacks him, and then he flips the zombie over, who falls over the side of the building and down to the ground of the platform. Or is it the street? Yeah, he fell to the street, so he flips him over. He fell to the street. And then, of course, Jeong goes back into his apartment room and starts to reminisce over what he just did. He thinks he kills a man, even if the man was erratic and wild, and everyone's acting crazy. He realizes this is the first time he's actually killed anything or anyone, so he's stressed out and he's worried that maybe he'll be punished for this. But as time goes by, he realizes no one's going to punish him for anything, because everyone is scared shitless and everyone's told to stay inside. So time has passed. It's now evening, or the following day of the following evening, and he's thinking to himself, well, how long can I sit around like this? Eventually time will go by and I'll have to leave outside. And then he reminisce on the person he just killed. He's still reminiscing over the person he just killed. So he ran outside to see the body that collapsed on the ground from the person he just killed, and he realized the person he just killed is obviously dead, but he's walking around with a broken leg and now a broken neck. So he says, okay, it's now 100% confirmed. If a person gets up from falling from that height with a broken leg and a broken neck, now I'm definitely in the zombie apocalypse. So he then reminisced even more of when Park was over at his house, and Park's friends were over at his house. And like I said, the design is kind of the shitty and the same. His hair is the same as his hair, the same as his hair, and his hair, and his hair. Whoever did the coloring for this manga, as well as the design of character's body, yeah, that's why it's in the fifth place. Certain things look too much the same. And if it wasn't for this guy's glasses, he would probably look like them too. So moving on from that, we had to see Han Yena, and Han Yena came to his window, which is now covered with cardboards and tape. Comes to his window, knocks on his window, says, "Are you in there?" He refused to let her in, but eventually he lets her in. And when she's inside, she drinks like 3 bottles of water, drinking up his water. He needs water to preserve himself. And eventually she tells him of how she got to his place, because she's the closest person that lives next to him, his place. So she knew where he was after staying with him when she was with Park last time they visited his place, even though she never wanted to be here. But she knew that his place was the closest place to where she lives. And she says she was hanging on a stairwell for quite some time, but she eventually ran out of food and she needed water, so she had to like stealth her way through certain alleys and stuff. And he said that's magnificent. She's brave, and he's surprised that she lasted for this long. But eventually, he doesn't have enough supplies for him and for her to last beyond a month. Within probably a week or two, they'll probably starve to death. So he has to think of a way for them to escape. So she says she's not going to sleep in the same room with him for that night. So he ends up sleeping inside of a closet or something, which is fine and everything. But after that, I would say moving forward, the story ends, I believe, at chapter 6 or chapter 7. I believe this might be chapter 7, where she told of the story of her past and her parents, and he ended up in his place running away. But so far, everything's in this manga seemed to be deviating from the fact that it's about the zombie apocalypse. It feels more like it's about him trying to hook up with this girl during the zombie apocalypse. It feels like it's a character story and him surviving the zombie apocalypse while trying to get along with this girl rather than it being the zombie apocalypse. So the story is more of a centerpiece focusing on him and his need to have acceptance from her. I'm not sure if that would sell with regards to what follows in a zombie apocalypse. Like, who gives a damn if you're really into this girl and everything? There's more serious things going on. In fact, he even says itself. He even says himself to the girl, who cares about, you know, you're not smelling good, or having fashion sense, or being on Instagram. Is like, you don't understand the situation you're in. This is the zombie apocalypse. You have to wake up. But in certain ways, from his point of view, he seems more fascinated with regards to what she thinks about him during the time of the zombie apocalypse than anything, rather than him surviving. I'm not sure if that's what's going on, but it seems to be deviating, going back and forth, because every now and again you get to see him thinking about her, or him thinking about um, uh, her, like her family and his financial situation. So it doesn't feel like a normal zombie apocalypse story. But then again, they're trying to personalize this from the point of view of this guy. So that's the reason why I have it at the 5th spot. So moving on from that, I would say these are the five mangas of April 2025. The 5 that I believe are decent, the 5 that I believe are good enough. The 5th one might be, which is The End Has Come, might be a little off. But if you want like a personal interest with regards to possible romance story developing during the zombie apocalypse, this seems to be something that's going on, even though the artwork for characters is not that good. But the first 4 stories, or should I say the first 3 stories, are probably the best that I've found so far. Waiting for the Sunlight, Man-Eating Apartment, Mason and the Man-Eating Apartment, and of course, uh, X Time Over Oblivion Lovers. From a mystery point of view, from a memento side of things, I would say that works quite good. But if you find that to be lame and you want something more on what's going on from a more dynamic, adventurous point of view, but weird mystery type of horror also point of view, Mason and the Man Eating Apartment will be something that's more your speed. And especially if you don't like things associated with reality and military, which will be Waiting for the Sunlight. you don't want to wait that long to see action happens, as in what it takes quite some time for it to get to where it needs to get to in waiting for the sunlight. But if you're very much a story person, you would find that to be far more interesting as story wise than the others. So it's really hard to describe how I would measure these things, because Mason and the Man Eating Apartment seem to be the best of all three worlds. You got mystery, you got action, you got horror, and you got a sense of personality of your main character, and a type of Miyazaki type of weirdness going on in the manga. So that's happening at the same time, but the story is not as strong as you want it to be, and the characters are not as powerful as they are in Waiting for the Sunlight. So, and then you have stuff like mystery. The mystery in there is not as powerful as X Time Over. So, and of course, if you want zombie stuff is present as in the end has come. And if you want something that's very unique and original to it, in and of itself, its own thing, like its own niche or its own little, like if you're watching an art film rather than a big budget film, I would say the Unnamed Sea is its own unique type of light novel type of manhwa more than anything else. So that said, it could be a Manhua. I have to go back on that. So that said, that was the five. Those were the five for the month of April going into May that you could read in the month of May. And in all truth, you only really need to rock one or two of them. You know, one of two of them, and necessarily doesn't have to, like, if you really want something kick-ass, you don't have to go down the route of something that's very historical. You could go down Mason and the Man Eating Apartment. And if you want something that's even more kick-ass, you could go straight to, The End Has Come and see zombie stuff. But that stuff takes a while as well. So if you don't like that either, you could then go to X Time Wars, whereas the action happens within the mystery of solving what's going on in the head of the guy, accumulating his memories to say whether it's sabotage, whether it's an attempted murder, whether it's vicious cycle of events happening again. You don't know what's going on. Hell, for all I know, it could be something supernatural going on there. But I would say the girl is probably a bad guy. So that's it. That's all I got to say for it. I'm really into Waiting for the Sunlight. It's very rare that I'm into military type mangas and stuff, and because some of them are done bad, but the ones that are done good, you could feel it within the story, and you could feel what's going on. So that's it for those. For this one, those are the five, and any one out of those would probably tickle your fancy. If you don't like long stories, you want to get straight to the action, Mason the Man Eating Apartment could do it for you, or The End Has Come. But if you want something that you could think on and think what's going on, what's the mystery, what's going on, who's doing this, why are they doing this, you could go straight for X Time Over. And also with regards to what's happening in Mason and the Man Eating Apartments. So yeah, those were the five. And you could check any one of them out. At least, I would say at least one of them out of those five would be something that you would like. So that's it for this one, and I'm calling it a day. I think I spoke enough with regards to this, and I don't want to leave this last. I definitely don't want to leave what I'm speaking to with regards to the story that's going on right here. I don't want to leave that image as I'm speaking, giving my opinion on these last images on the fifth one, because I believe The End Has Come is not as powerful as the first three that I've spoke on. I don't think it comes even close, especially when it comes to the artwork and perspective as well as the story itself. I believe stuff like X Time Overs, how it started, its unique way of doing things. I believe how Waiting for the Sunlight starts is very unique. I believe how Mason and the Man Eating Apartment started, and the whole thing with regards to the apartment birthing kids through like a machine itself. It's very weird. So there's a huge mystery going on right here. And more than that is the world that's almost on fire by this giant sun. It's very interesting. But if you want like a deep story, like stories that have meaning, stories that's very realistic, stories that you could see make into a movie, I believe Waiting for the Sunlight is something that I could definitely see more than anything turn into a film, made to give a certain type of feeling, a certain type of emotion, a certain type of behavior that's necessary towards um, the survival of this manga. Like, if they go down the route, I think they're going down. I could see this surviving for quite a long time because it has historical context attached to it. But if they deviate from the historical context of this manga and make it more animated and more things fictional, it won't hurt it because they could go straight Dragon Ball Z and it won't hurt it at all. It'll just take a different path. In fact, it might heighten it somewhat because not everyone likes things that are historically attached. But at the same time, it would have to be things historically attached in order to ground it. So it's good. In my opinion, it and Mason and the Man Eating Apartments are probably the two best ones. And coming in at the third would probably be X Time Over. So it really depends on what you're really into and what you really find to be interesting. Here I find everything with regards to Yoko and the loss of her parents and the situation that are happening during World War II to be far more fascinating than anything else. So for right now, I would say this is the end of this video, and I believe I should check out right now. But the one thing I would say I hate about these videos is that every time I check out, it leaves like a timestamp on one of the ones that I don't like. So it doesn't really matter. I know which one I like. I know which one I'm into. And you could pick whichever one you like and whichever one you're into. And that's it for this video. I'm calling it a day.